Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today is my general physical preparedness or metabolic conditioning work. And as I've said before, I'm going to start recording up to 3 of these every day, except maybe when I'm doing deloads and stuff like that, because I do these every day, but I thought, let's just go ahead and document a lot of it. And I already do training vlogs so that people have a better idea of what my full training looks like instead of just my main sessions. And so we're kind of keeping this going, and people will see that I adjust this based around my max effort days. Like today, because yesterday afterwards I did a lot more chin-ups. I ended up doing 100 chins yesterday, and then I did grip training. And today, I only did 2 rounds of the farmer's walks and 2 sets of the chin-ups. Now, I need to build my work capacity on chin-ups. My target goal for now is to try to get to 500 every week, but that may not be feasible. I hit at least 400 though. We hit 400 minimum every week. I want to get to 5 and eventually get that up further. But right now I'm still building work capacity, and sometimes it interferes with things like deadlifting and the grip training. Same thing with the dips. I want to get the dips up to the same point, but what I found the last couple of weeks that if I do too many on a Sunday, it interferes with my max pressing session on Mondays. So today we only did 2 rounds of this stuff, of the first 2, and then we went to just straight leg work for the rest of the conditioning and went really hard on that because I don't have to squat or deadlift tomorrow, but I do have to do it Tuesday. And so for me, because I've done grip training every day for the past 3 or 4 days and loaded carries, I stopped there for the loaded carries. I'm not going to do any grip training tonight, and I won't do any loaded carries or grip work tomorrow. I'll probably just do chins and pull-ups after the max bench session, just for some conditioning. So we'll do it that way, and then after I hit my max deadlift on Tuesday, we'll see how it goes, because I've got to do a max pull on Tuesday, and I really can't afford the grip fatigue. My grip was an issue last time, so I've been working grip harder. In fact, working grip is a pretty high priority for me right now, as far as even my various later day workouts go, because I know it needs to come up, but I also can't have the grip fatigued. I can't have my grip being fatigued when I get to a deadlift. And if I wasn't doing a max deadlift for the max effort day, I wouldn't actually even be adjusting it like this. All right, I would go ahead and train grip every day. I only need my grip to be recovered when I go for max deadlifting, which is every other week, because we rotate it with a squat. We do a squat variation, then a deadlift variation, back and forth. But chest presses are done pretty much every day unless I just decide to randomly do some sort of overhead press for a max. But this week it is going to be a chest type press, like most weeks, almost every week. So I had to back off on the dips today, and it ended up only being 20 dips. And no, that's not a real training response. To do 20 chin-ups or 20 dips in a day for me is insignificant in the recovery. But it does work into a conditioning circuit, right? It works into a conditioning circuit. So that's good, and that's what we're doing. And this is what's keeping my energy turnover so high. And people need to, again, understand, why do we do Metcon work? We do Metcon work to get into shape. This builds conditioning. I also had someone chime in and say, oh, this isn't intensity, bro. And it's like, of course not. We go 100% intensity on Mondays and Tuesdays, right? I have 2 max effort days. I go to a 1 rep max on those days. We go to a 1 rep max, and then we do a bunch of volume work to make the weak points grow. Basically a bunch of sets of 10. Pick a couple different exercises and do like 5 sets of 10, pretty much close to failure. Maybe up to 3 exercises after the maxes, right? That's what we do. That's what we do on the max effort days. And then the dynamic effort days, we do speed work, followed by the same sort of training volume for hypertrophy. And the speed work is actually harder. Like, let's talk about people misperceiving intensity versus effort. I can tell you right now, dynamic effort days are a lot harder than 1 rep max days are. And you have to be in shape. Like, in fact, all this conditioning work is almost essential to do DE days. First problem I have with clients, I got a client right now who's fairly new to conjugate. It's someone I've been coaching for months. We've rotated him over to conjugate, and the speed days are hard. And everyone who does it knows that. When you do them correctly, dynamic effort requires you to be in shape. You tend to get hurt easy, you pull muscles, you get minor strains, you're completely out of breath. When you do them correctly, sometimes you're on the ground harder than if you just did a serious cardio session. You got to be in shape, so we need this stuff to carry over. But the dynamic days, we do all the explosive work with short rests. And it's not necessarily with heavy weight. All right, I mean, I might be using 50% of my 1 rep max with 25% band or chain tension. So if my max is 500 pounds on an exercise, I'm not even going to go over 250 and no more than about 120 or 130 pounds of bands and chains. But we do it as explosively as possible with really short breaks for a very large number of sets, like 10 to 20 sets of it with low reps, with very, very short breaks for power. And then things like weighted plyometrics. And then we do all the volume work behind it. These days are not about that. We are using resistance training in a circuit to get heart rate up. We're not reaching muscular failure, we're reaching cardiovascular fatigue. This is conditioning work. But what people, again, need to grasp when we're talking about this sort of conditioning work, does it cause some growth? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You're doing very, very high reps with big exercises. There's going to be some hypertrophy to it, particularly the weak links. If you've got a weak muscle in that chain somewhere, it's probably going to grow off of it. But what we're doing is we're increasing work capacity, right? We're increasing work capacity. We're increasing recovery ability. This sort of training builds your ability to do work and to recover from it, because we train the cardiovascular system, right? We build capillary beds in our muscles. All of these things make us more efficient at clearing waste products. So what does that mean when you've got to do speed squats, right? What does it mean when you got to do speed squats and speed deadlifts back to back? You can recover quicker. You can cut the rest times down. If you can cut rest times down, you can generate maximum force more times in the same number of minutes. We can get a much higher work density. If we can clear waste products faster, we can be more explosive more times, more often, with maximum force, right? It basically, this, more than anything, this makes you really good at your dynamic effort days. And then the dynamic effort days do have an enormous hypertrophy element. And that's one of the big perks. Everybody who does true dynamic effort work correctly comes back and notices that they just get thicker. It makes you bigger. Irrespective of what else it does, dynamic effort work is ultra efficient at hypertrophy. In my experience, every natural guy I've ever known who's drug-free, who's run conjugate, they all blew up when they really got good at the DE work. So there's also that indirect carryover of this carries over into that, in addition to just helping with your conditioning. Because, I mean, you look at this, this ends up being, what, this is around 18 minutes of just 4 rounds, right? Our heart rate's elevated pretty high during all this. Basically interval type training. And people say, well, these step-ups, like, you guys got to think about this. Because I did the first 2 rounds here because I did the other exercises. I only did 20 of these on each leg. The next 2 rounds, which take just as long, I do 30 of these alternating each leg, and then I followed up with GHRs. But I'm already a bit tired from doing the other stuff. So at that point, now that we have some fatigue already accumulated, doing 30 on each leg is pretty tough. I weigh 220 pounds. I'm stepping up on a box that brings my knee above my hip, okay? I'm not stepping up on a 12-inch box. I'm on a 20-inch box in a work boot, which puts it up in probably another inch, so about a 21-inch step up. All right, that's deeper than a deep squat, and you're stepping up on each leg and alternating. Because you alternate each time, it gives you some rest. Gives you some rest. So again, that's a lot of overall just heart rate staying elevated. That alone is good conditioning. And think about it in terms of quad hypertrophy. It's a lot of quad volume, and it's under that deep stretch position, right, where the lower quad really doesn't always get worked on some exercises. We're hitting that whole area, working the whole quad, the glute, a lot of extra training volume. And we could argue that they're not necessarily limit sets, but if we think about accumulation of total volume and fatigue through the week, those are muscles that actually have a fairly high resistance to volume because they're in your legs, all right? This can absolutely add a little bit of leg hypertrophy. But you also think of it in terms of the metabolic benefits, because this is also a function of your strength. So if your work capacity is high because you're like me and your box squat's up over 500 pounds, you generate a lot of force on these. You can do a lot of work on this. And that's the other thing you've got to remember. There's a strength component to this conditioning. It all feeds into each other. This all feeds together into a flow. That's why this sort of training works. And it's a thing that I have to keep highlighting over and over and over. Conjugate type training is not powerlifting training. Okay? Powerlifting doesn't require a specific form of training. All you have to do to have a good powerlifting total is be brutally strong. You do not have to train for powerlifting to be a good powerlifter, because it's not a skill-based sport. Skill can help, but you're not going to add 200 pounds to your total because you get good at the lifts. 90 to 95% of your total is going to come just from your brute strength. It's a brute strength sport. That's all it measures. Everything else, that last little bit's about technique and form, specificity. But you don't have to have that. If you have an elite level of strength, you're going to have an elite total even if you don't practice the lifts. It doesn't matter. You just have to be able to complete on the way the judges want. Same thing. What else do you look at? Your body composition. Really fat guys don't do well in powerlifting unless you're in the super heavyweights, which is less than 1% of competitors. And the only reason they do well is because sometimes they're the only guy in their whole class at the comp. They don't have anybody who's 400 pounds to compete with them. They don't have anybody that they have to worry about beating them. Okay? They win. They get a gold. Because no one wants to be that fat. They don't have competition. But that seems to get highlighted sometimes. But then body composition. So let's come over to this. Metcon work improves body composition over time. This will help you have better body composition if it accumulates over time. Well, that helps you be a better power lifter. So this is honestly the conjugate method, and it's a thing I have to highlight over and over, and I'm going to keep doing it till I'm blue in the face so people get it. This is sports training. This is athletic training. All strong athletes could be a power lifter if they chose to be. So people will see this and say, oh, this is just powerlifting training. No, it's not. Or they look and say, well, this doesn't look like powerlifting training. Well, because this whole method, even though it was devised by powerlifters for powerlifters, is carried over into dozens of other sports. This is just elite athlete training now. This is just basic strength and conditioning for everyone who needs to be big and strong and explosive and conditioned, which is almost every athlete on earth within the context of their weight class or maybe their endurance requirements. This is part of the framework. Okay, this Metcon work is part of the system. And all the coaches who teach this system would argue that it is a critical component in the long term to the system because you have to be in shape. You have to be in shape. And this is your base strength and conditioning for anything you want to go into. This system can give you the basic skill set you need in terms of strength and conditioning and power to go into whatever sport you choose to be sport specific at. You take someone who gets really good at doing this, they're going to be able to do whatever sport they want. You want to do powerlifting, go do powerlifting. You want to go do mixed martial arts, go do mixed martial arts. Because you can skip all the other stuff for the strength and conditioning for all of those. You can just go right into the sport-specific stuff and learn the skills necessary. You only have to worry about skill training at that point. This is all around training, and here's how I would put it. And this is why I like this system, and people can argue about it all that they want. It's been proven in sport after sport after sport after sport after sport, including hybrid athletes. There is no debate against that. There's no debate against that. You can argue it, but you're going to look really stupid. And that includes some people who I like, who make their living selling alternative training methods. They're smart guys, but they know that's marketing. They know this works. Been proven in too many sports. Too many good coaches use it for multiple athletes. Some of the coaches who teach this coach athletes in 6 different sports. Okay? Elite athletes in 6 different sports. This is, as Louis Simmons put it, just the best way to train. He doesn't say for powerlifting. He says there's really only one best way to train, and what we've tried to do is develop that system. And you know, a lot of people would throw criticism at that guy and his coaches and the people that they coach. But I'll be damned if it doesn't work. And that's something that you've got to factor in. And that's one of the things that I didn't even factor in when I've used this in the past and to come back around and been critical of it. It works. And as much as we might have some criticism of some of it, or criticisms, whatever personal criticisms you have towards that guy or the West Side guys or any of them, it works. It works. And it's been proven. I'll just be honest, Louis Simmons is a mad genius. The guy is a mad genius, mad scientist. But the stuff works. It works. And I personally, and at least personal friends, I'm not going to name names, but at least one guy who has spent many years at Westside, who is a coach, who I've chatted with a little bit in private, and I watch what he does. I have a better understanding of this system. Watching some of these guys, chatting with some of these guys, and understanding how to make it work for everything. And so for me, yes, I consider myself a power lifter, but I consider myself an athlete, and I'm trying to just be a general athlete who just happens to be good at powerlifting, and that's what those guys are. Even those guys who are doing it in the multiply equipment, they're just all around good athletes who just happen to have used that system to be good at powerlifting, and in some cases break world records. They're just choosing to do it in multiply oftentimes, but the guys can come in and do it raw too. There's plenty of guys there who deadlift 800 plus pounds raw. Some people would just argue that you don't have to do this system to be good at powerlifting. And those people are also correct. They're right also. You could do just straight specificity. You could just focus on being as good as possible to squat, bench, and deadlift and not do this system. And you will be just as good, right? You could be just as good at powerlifting. But you won't be as athletic all the way around. And that's the argument for it. This is just general athletic strength, power, and conditioning training. And the GPP falls into it. You know, and honestly, this wasn't as hard as I even thought this one would be to do this at the 30. It gave a good burn, heart rate was up, but I'm honestly not even that fatigued. It's fine. And, you know, because tomorrow I've got to go heavy. Next 2 days are my really, really heavy days, so I've got to reserve myself a little bit for those. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.